All right. It having been and gone 6:30 already, I think we'll call this meeting to order. And we'll start tonight with an update from the CDD.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll try to keep this as quick as possible. So in terms of the board's upcoming agendas, your next meeting is excuse me, tonight's meeting is Town Gown, of course. And the next meeting is February 12th, where we have a couple of general business items. So continued design review of 325 Main Street, and you have some BZA cases that the board has expressed interest on 704 Huron Ave and 74 Oxford Street. On the following meeting is February 26th, which will include a public hearing on 229, 231 3rd Street, which is a request for a registered a marijuana dispensary, and a hearing for a zoning petition on hotel use in Industry B. In terms of other items at City Council that the board might be interested in, today there were two hearings at the Ordinance Committee, one on the rainwater on flat roofs ordinance, and the Ordinance Committee has forwarded a negative recommendation to the full council on that, or they voted to do that. And the second hearing was on accessory dwelling units, and that discussion has been held, that topic has been held at Ordinance, and the discussion will continue. On February 13th at noon, the Council's Economic Development and University Relations Committee will hold a hearing on implementation steps that have happened since we completed the retail strategy plan, and a couple of items of note that will be discussed then are the vacant storefront initiative that we're working on, part of which includes things like a ongoing listing, a database of vacancies, and excuse me, as well as a design competition that we're just concluding to solicit artwork that could then be included in on windows, on store windows when they are vacant, to at least create a more pleasant street front. On February 14th, the Ordinance Committee will have a hearing at 5:30 on changes to the tree protection ordinance, particularly focused on procedures for removal of significant trees. February 26th at 2, the Transportation and Public Utilities Committee will hold a hearing on MBTA's Better Bus project, focused on the impacts in Cambridge, so as it relates to bus lines and service throughout the city. And on February 27th, Wednesday at 5:30, the Ordinance Committee will have a hearing on a municipal ordinance related to bicycle safety. So that takes us through the end of the month, and I'm going to stop there. Thank you very much.
Sounds like a busy month. Okay. Do we have any transcripts for adoption? No transcripts for adoption tonight. Okay. All right. Well, then we'll move on to our main item of general business, which is tonight is, you all know, is our Town Gown reports. And we're going to start off this evening with a report from the Holt International School of Business. Go ahead.
Good evening. Good evening. Great. My name is Shauna Marino, and I'm joined this evening by Shane Steffens. We are both with Holt International Business School, and we're really excited to share a few updates this evening about the overall Halt EF campus, as well as talk a bit about how the Halt programs are evolving and growing and how we continue to be the world's most international business school. And so the last time we presented 2 years ago, we were on the cusp of launching the undergraduate program for Halt in Massachusetts, and that successfully happened this past fall. We had our first incoming undergraduate students, about 150 students from all over the world, joining our other campuses in San Francisco and London. And so now today, Halt offers both undergraduate and graduate degree programs, both in Cambridge and around the world. And what we're really known for is this sort of accelerated one-year MBA program that is a 3-campus rotational experience where students go around the world. It's fascinating. Every year, the diversity of the student body increases. We always have to say, wow, do we actually have that many countries in the world? Because there's students from all over represented. And I learned today when we were preparing for this presentation that no one nationality makes up more than 7% of the student body. So I get that question a lot with some of our international schools from planning boards around the world saying, you know, do you have more of this type of nationality or this type? And they're curious. And it's fascinating that we truly are sort of a mini United Nations at each and every one of our campuses. So like I said, we have this global rotation program. We encourage students to experience as many of our campuses as they can, but the typical program is 3 campuses in a year. We've got our beautiful Cambridge campus. We then have San Francisco. We're in London, where the undergraduate program started. Dubai, gorgeous, gorgeous space there. Shanghai continues to grow. One of EF's flagship offices is right near the Halt School. And then New York, where we lease space in New York, and it's a very popular destination as well. And so we thought we would start with a short video to tell you the Halt story by none other than Bertil Halt himself. So let's see how this works with the audio.
My father, Bertil Halt, he started EF 50 years ago. His base idea was that there was a better way to learn than just through books. We believe that experiential learning is just a better way to learn. Over the years, Bertil noticed that the world was getting more and more interconnected, and he thought that traditional business schools weren't necessarily keeping up. It was too theoretical. People weren't learning through doing, and we saw an opportunity to create a different kind of business school, which was more practical, more focused on what real companies need.
We wanted to create a business school which changed the way people are educated, so that the students learn by doing. That's why we started Halt. Because success in business today is as much about understanding globalization and cultures as it is about understanding finance and marketing. But business school in general weren't helping their students keep up with how quickly things were changing. We believe the world needed a practical school to educate not just leaders of business, but leaders of the world. And that's why Hult International Business School was born.
Since 2003, when Halt welcomed in its first class here in Cambridge, Halt has been a different kind of business school. Halt's an independent, not-for-profit, and we emphasize innovation, entrepreneurial thinking, and practical learning. Our goal is that students apply real lessons from real companies. Today, Halt has 6 campuses around the world. But it's not the campuses that make Halt global. It's the students. They come from over 150 nationalities, and they speak more than 100 languages. They bring their diverse perspective together to solve the most pressing issues facing business today. And in the process, they learn to think differently about the possibilities of the future.
I graduate tomorrow, and I know that I have developed the skill set that I need to be able to negotiate.
Studying business at Holt is very practical and hands-on because you get to work on real-life consulting projects.
So what really surprised me when I came to Holt is how close you are to the professors and how much they care about their students' learning.
What stood out for me the most about Holt was the diverse student body and the faculty.
It's kind of having like friends all over the world. All my life changed, all of it.
Our family believes in the power of transformative education, and we're really proud to support the Holt International Business School.
All right. So one of the questions that the board specifically asked, or the planning staff asked a little bit about, was how enrollment is changing and how the school is growing. And so I wanted to share a few statistics about how we are continuing to evolve and innovate and therefore compete around the world. The Economist has us ranked quite high. The Financial Times is continuing to take a closer look at us as a real up-and-coming business school. And, you know, we're super proud that our students are not only gaining the academic skills that they need to compete on a global level and compete in the business world, but they're also gaining the soft skills and the experiential learning. And as you know, at our core and everything we do, it's all about experiential learning. And so a big part of what our students do is they get matched with companies here in Boston and Cambridge. They do internships. They're mentors. They mentor younger students. They get mentored by executives. And there's a lot of practical opportunities that come out of our programs. So now, just to go through a little bit of the more real estate piece of this, as you know, the Holt School leases space from EF Education First, and we own all the land and all the buildings over at North Point. The EF Holt ratio is a little bit lopsided these days over there because after we built the EF North American headquarters, Holt then started to take over most of the other space at North Point. And so Holt Center, which was the original EF building, is now predominantly used as a big classroom building for Holt. All except for 2 floors of that building are now classroom space for Holt. We, I think as everyone remembers, we acquired the former Cambridge College building after Cambridge College moved over to Charlestown, and we've taken that building and completely transformed it. If you're ever in the area and want to stop in, you're 100% invited. It's really a cool space. It was a complete gut renovation, and we opened it this past fall. You have a few classrooms where literally the T looks like it's going to crash into the building because it's right there. So it's a really dynamic, tons of energy. It's a really neat space. And then as you know, the EF3 project, which is now going to be named Holt House, is under construction. I took this photo today from our EF building, and there's a lot more that's coming to it, but it's starting to take shape, and the glass is getting installed, and we're starting to really see how that ground floor takes over. And this is going to be our big student dormitory, and which is a really exciting opportunity to be able to have housing at North Point for students, a use that I think we all, got excited about when we went through that process. So in thinking about as we're growing, faculty and staff, as you might recall, come in from all over the world. So we have a very transient faculty. Sometimes folks live in London and they come here for 2 weeks and teach a course and then go back. So there's a lot of movement with our faculty, and we share faculty across all campuses. So it's a little bit untraditional in that sense. From a student growth perspective, we're still on track with what we've projected. If all goes well, we hope that the undergraduate program really takes off. But right now, we're anticipating hopefully about 1,000 students at real full capacity. And then our graduate students are in the same situation. You know, we've always projected about 1,200 in that space. Right now, I think we're at about 900. So we're getting close to capacity, and we'll continue to sort of understand how we spread student growth across all of the global campuses. And then I understand that everyone's always curious with international students in particular, you know, where are they living? And so we survey our students every year. A lot of them live in Cambridge, but they do seek housing kind of elsewhere. Our students don't drive, so a big factor for them in coming to the Cambridge location is that it's so accessible via public transportation. With the addition of the new Halt House student dormitory, the EF3 building, we're going to have about 500 Halt students living on campus starting this summer for next academic year. So just in general, we're expecting a lot of the students who already live in Cambridge to take us up on the fact that they can now have, you know, managed student housing, which is really exciting. But because a number of our graduate students are on that 1 year only rotational, you'll have a lot of sort of flux where students come in for a few months and then another student takes their spot. And that's a really big reason why we decided to build our own housing, because we have such a unique student body, and organizing leases and housing swaps with private, you know, landlords was getting really, really complicated. And this way they'll have a seamless transition where they have a 1 year MBA and they have housing in Cambridge for their time, and they don't have to go through any sort of private landlord. Like I said, the proximity, we all know this is a real up-and-coming area from a transportation perspective. Over 60% of our students use the Orange Line to get to and from the campus. The pedestrian sort of connections between the Orange Line and the EF Halt campus are really strong. And the Green Line, I'm sure once the extension takes place, will be used more often, but it is really interesting how many students use the Orange Line. We also have a customized shuttle system that brings HALT students and EF staff on demand around the area as necessary. So, and it's on a schedule that works with class schedules, so typically students use that. We do, however, have subsidized Easy Ride, actually free Easy Ride passes for students. And then I think everyone in Cambridge now knows about the Global Challenge. HALT plays a really important role in the Global Challenge. The student finalists who work at CDD in the summer through the Mayor's Summer Youth Employment Program, they go through a HALT accelerator in the spring. And so faculty and students from HALT mentor the finalist teams, which is usually about 40 or 50 kids before they come into CDD in the summer, and they do a ton of work with them to get their projects ready to implement. And we've really enjoyed utilizing HALT's expertise in that way with this program, which, for those of you who don't know, the Global Challenge is a partnership between the City of Cambridge and Public Schools, Ringe and Latin School, and EF and HALT. And this past year, the challenge was climate change, and they're going to be implementing lots of exciting projects about how to communicate the realities of climate change in Cambridge. So we really are proud of the role that HALT plays with that program, and we look forward to continuing that. And with that, I'm happy to take questions. You may know this or not, but I'm actually trying to catch a flight in the next hour. So, I'm going to Los Angeles, and Shane has to go to Zurich. So we're going to opposite sides of the world, which just gives you a little bit of perspective of a day in the life of anyone in our organization. So if you have any questions now, I'm happy to help. If not, one of my colleagues will stay behind and be available at the end. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, because of the travel schedules, what I would like to do now is, to the extent we have any factual data, HALT-specific questions that we can raise now so that as many people can hear them firsthand as possible, that would be good. And then, as we have done, I think, in years past, many of our questions are going to require deeper discussion between the board and may require other, the schools to go back and do some deeper thinking about things. And obviously, we'd rely on their colleagues to forward those kinds of questions later as we discuss them in the context of all the other presentations. So does anyone, Tom?
I have just simply a quick factual question. Obviously, in growth mode, the chart showed the student population growing dramatically. Is that globally, or is that what we're going to experience in Cambridge?
It's globally. So when you think about it, you know, the world is getting smaller. The increase of demand for our programs is really exciting. So we expect a global growth. It will be leveled throughout the world at all of our different campuses.
So is your undergraduate program a typical four-year program?
Yes, it is. And students come from it from U.S. high schools as well as international high schools, and then they go in for 4 years. But they do rotate around the world.
That was my next question. They do rotate?
Yep, it's their choice. I would say 99.9% of them do.
So you'll have students coming in and out periodically.
With the undergraduate program, they're likely to stay one place for a year, but we do offer them the opportunity to go for a semester and then come back.
Thank you.
Other questions? Yeah, Corinne?
My question is just along that same line about the student growth. So it's about 3 times as many folks in the next 10 years compared to the 2014 numbers. And I hear us getting to this question, but I'm trying to understand how many new people will be living in Cambridge.
So, you know, it's a really difficult question because they're not the same. One number may not be one total student because of the rotational program. So, you know, we're doing our very best to project, and I think that as we get a better handle on the success of the undergraduate program here, we're happy to report in, you know, next year we'll have a full year under our belt, and that might be a good opportunity to provide a little bit more concrete projections.
I just have one quick one. I may have missed it. What's your capacity for housing?
So our capacity is 500 students today. What we're building is about 500. We really need to test it to know if it's going to be successful. And that's not because we don't think student housing is successful. It's just that with the international student, it's slightly different. And also they're not here typically for the same amount of time as a regular undergraduate might be, because they're here for a year and then they go to another campus. So we all think it's going to be successful, but we want to see what happens before we think about next steps.
In case it's under capacity, do you have much room to add capacity?
In case it's under, you mean in case we have a demand? Well, I get asked that question all the time. Where is EF or HALT going next? We just don't have any immediate plans for it. So I think we all know that we've maxed out on our side of the Gilmore Bridge, unless, Boston Sand and Gravel decides to go, which I don't think that will happen. But yeah, no, just joking aside, we're not speculating. We don't have any immediate plans for expanding in Cambridge. We've had a lot of growth in the last few years.
Okay, thank you very much. Good
Thank
luck
you very
catching your
much.
plane.
Thank you.
All right. So next on our agenda then is MIT.
Thank you. Madam Chair, members of the Planning Board, everybody, good night. I tried to convince my team to change the cover for a Patriots Parade one, but I find that to be acknowledging of what's happened. We chose a different highlight. So I'm Israel Ruiz. I'm the Executive Vice President and Treasurer of MIT. And it's a pleasure to be back before you to run you through our projects and highlights of the year. I've asked many of my colleagues and MIT directors for certain areas that work in the town-gown relationship to be with me and update you on several of those areas. And what I choose to do every year is to give you a highlight from a strategic perspective. And this one, it's kind of a reflective and a prospective reflective to give you a sense of where we're going. And the picture is kind of a clue. This is our 2014 winner of the Eugene McDermott Arts Award. And yes, we do have an award, very important one. And Olafur Eliasson won that one. And this is the commission piece for our newest open building, MIT Nano. And MIT Nano has been before you for many years. I can tell you it was 1,000 days of construction schedule, and we used 999 of them. We opened in June. It's a building that we're very proud of at the core of the campus, right behind the MIT Dome. It services 2,000 members of our community, and it's the largest, believe it or not, MIT commitment to improving and enabling and enhancing its research capabilities. It's a building that does not hold any office in it. It's a building that's purposely built for state-of-the-art research in nanotechnology. At the top floor houses the undergraduate teaching lab, and it's become now a magnet for everybody at MIT to convene. The second project that I wanted to highlight for you is the prospective reflection, and that was our most recent announcement for the MIT Stephen A. Schwarzman College of Computing, which represents, since the 1950s when MIT formed the Schools of Humanities, Arts, and Social Sciences and the Sloan School of Management, it represents a very bold bet. And it comes from, as you may presume from MIT, a data-oriented analysis. More than 80% of our students choose to be in computing either through majoring or minoring in computing. It also denotes that more than 70% of our most recent hired faculty, junior faculty, use AI and computing and machine learning technology to support their research, no matter what field they are in. And we chose to augment our faculty by 50 positions, 25 at the core of computing science and 25 in the bridge between every discipline and computing science that's being enabled by these new computation and machine learning tools. So the building design and site have been chosen. We were this morning spending a lot of time really thinking through the architect selection. The site is what we're calling Site 44, is along right in the middle of Vassar Street, next to the intersection of Vassar and Main. It's one of the old Cyclotron and J building, kind of a two-story building. We plan to renovate that building, raise that one, and kind of build another one that will connect the Brain and Cognitive Sciences complex and all the interdisciplinarity that this college comes with. And the third update that I chose for tonight is one that we've also been very proud. It's located in Central Square in our really big connection with the public schools here in Cambridge, as well as the communities in Central Square. The picture is the Lemelson MIT group that's kind of coming to the engine, and the engine in just a couple of years, since 2017, when it formally really launched, it's gone from one company and 10 team members to more than 14 companies and 120 people. They are mostly at full capacity. We're now engaged in renovating the adjacent spaces, and this has become now a transformative bet for how the MIT community comes here and really lives and breathes Cambridge and Central Square. So with that, let me give you the most updated versions of all the sections through starting with campus planning and John Alvarez.
Good evening. John Alvarez. I'm the Director of Campus Planning at MIT. Student housing has been a particular focus at MIT. Recently, with the completion of renovations of W70, conversion of 70 Amherst Street from undergraduate to graduate housing, and the start of construction of a new residence hall on Vassar Street. It's indicated there. We will complete the Vassar Residence Hall this summer, which will allow flexibility in renovation for the remaining undergraduate residence halls. Additionally, Site 4 Residence Hall in Kendall Square, slated to open in 2020 with 450 new graduate beds. We're also planning the new 500 graduate beds per the Volpe agreement. We plan to begin permitting for these beds late in 2020. Building projects on our campus often provide an opportunity to improve streetscapes or provide open space. The top map shows several examples of how we integrate streetscapes and open space into these projects. Going counterclockwise on the top map is the Kendall Square Gateway and Plaza, the Ames Street two-way cycle track, the Grand Junction multi-path, multi-use path, the North Corridor, we'll talk a little bit more in detail, and Vassar Street improvements, which I'll also cover in greater detail. We have at MIT approximately 2,300 trees on campus, and we look forward to opportunities to increase these plantings. In 2018, with the opening of MIT Nano, then the North Corridor open space, MIT was able to add over 100 trees to the center of our campus. The North Corridor project, The North Corridor project, associated with the construction of MIT Nano, has transformed the former vehicular service drives and surface parking into a green, pedestrian-friendly campus crossing. Landscape beds capture and filter stormwater. A new corridor and courtyard planted extensively with trees create welcoming and new open spaces. So you can see many of the attributes listed on the slides. I think we're perhaps most proud of the fact that of the 1.5 acres of landscape, filter provides 56,200 gallons of stormwater storage, 70% reduction in phosphorus, 40% reduction in peak rate and volume in stormwater. Vassar Street is a primary campus corridor, and we're excited to transform this into one of the main streets of our campus in the coming years. We will be replanting trees and reviving the right-of-way on East Vassar from Main Street to Mass Ave. Occupancy of the new Vassar Street Residence Hall in 2020, depicted here, will enliven the corridor with additional pedestrian traffic and provide attractive plaza and pedestrian and bicycle crossing of the new Grand Junction path. Conversion of the Met Warehouse right next door to a new home for the School of Architecture and Planning and a headquarters for the Project Manus will, in addition to building of the new College of Computing, are both excellent opportunities to enliven the Vassar Street connection. Both the new College of Computing and the expanded central utility plant will enhance a key crossing of path by pedestrians and bicyclists. Additionally, plans for a community path along the Grand Junction will create a complementary pedestrian bike thoroughfare to parallel Vassar Street and advance the potential for transit service in the future. So our major building projects, the central utility plant expansion is in its final stages. Startup and commissioning is planned for October 2019 with the expectation that the plant will be fully operational in April of 2020. The new central utility plant's greenhouse gas emissions are expected to be 10% lower than those of 2014 levels. The Metropolitan Storage Warehouse is being renovated, as I said, as a new home for the School of Architecture and Planning, and a campus-wide makerspace run by Project Manus. The massive brick structure that was built in the late 19th and early 20th century and is of high historic significance for its architecture and its association with the history and development of the city of Cambridge. After an in-depth MIT community-driven search and selection process, architects Diller, Scofidio, and Renfro of New York have been selected to design the project. MIT's music program will also get a new facility central to campus. The new facility will be designed to meet current and future needs of MIT's music program and will house a new performance laboratory. It will be constructed adjacent to Kresge Auditorium, which has served for many decades as the primary performance facility at MIT. With space for lectures, practice, and performance, the new building will consolidate many of the music program's activities into one location and incorporate critical aspects of acoustic design for optimal listening, playing, and recording. We're currently in the architect selection process for this project. I'd like to now turn it over to Julie Newman.
Madam Chair, members of the Planning Board, good to be back. I'm Julie Newman, Director of Sustainability at MIT. And please note, sustainable design standards span all of the projects that John just mentioned about. I will not be speaking to that tonight, though. But for those of you not familiar with MIT's approach to sustainability, you know, our commitment is framed by our commitment to sustainability is framed by a commitment that considers scales of impact in our understanding and analysis of and solution development for sustainability across the role of the individual, to the campus, to the city, and the globe. So Cambridge is completely integrated into the way we approach all of our work. And similar to that of Cambridge and how I know many of the Cambridge folks, is that we set up committees, working groups, task forces on an annual basis mapped to our current priorities, you know, for that year. And so on an annual basis, we produce various reports and recommendations which provide direction on a variety of priority topics, and those are then mapped to actions and implementation plans across the Institute. And the four that I will share with you for tonight that shape our 2017, some of our 2017 and 2018 activities, cut across materials embedded in our working groups from a number of years ago, climate, which you're all familiar with through our Plan for Climate Action, food through a recent report on food and sustainability, and I'll end with our more visionary framework, which is the Pathways to Sustainability Leadership. So I'll just provide you a very brief update from each of those areas. Now, not explicitly shown in today's update, but underlying all of our work, and happy to take questions, is the methodology of collaboration between research and operations, and a commitment to robust data collection and analysis as the common thread through all of our work. So let me begin by a mention of consumption in a material world, which is something, again, we have common ground with. So we're nearing the end of a 2-year campus material flow analysis, measuring and analyzing all of the goods that we bring into the campus and our patterns of use and disposal. We're taking a systems approach to understanding our patterns of consumption and then working to understand and articulate our impact. So we're grappling with a volume of different items numbering over 1 million purchased in 1 year to support all of the activities at MIT. And we're learning, and again, where this will be shared across Cambridge, we're continuing to analyze in an Amazon world, if you will, the number of packages received. We're starting to estimate at about 30% increase per year over the past 5 years, and needing to grapple with that. So through this process, we seek to promote patterns of sustainable consumption that enhance the health of people and the planet. We're looking to grow a circular economy where innovation drives reuse and outputs can feed back into inputs. And we're looking to transform systems to have dialogue with Cambridge around a zero waste future where waste is designed out of the system. Moving on to climate resiliency, which is a topic near and dear to many in this room. Moving from modeling to planning over the past year, MIT's partnership with the City of Cambridge remains vital for addressing collective urban and regional climate scale challenges of flooding to heat risks. And it's these collaborative activities that demonstrate how city and university partnerships are essential and are essential for town gown resiliency planning. So together, MIT and the city are growing a more resilient campus and city through two parallel efforts designed to reduce the uncertainty of current and future climate risks. We have an integrated campus and city flood risk model that we're working on collectively with you. And we have a collective approach to identifying steps for promoting continuity of business and research activities for Cambridge institutions. So this approach to modeling will continue to inform us at the campus and the city level moving forward. Another project that you're all familiar with is our greenhouse gas commitment, driven by our plan for climate action. So progress towards meeting MIT's campus greenhouse gas reduction goal of initially 32% by 2030 from our 2014 emission levels continues on pace. In addition to our continuing energy efficiency investments across campus, I should say deep energy efficiency investments, the strong performance of MIT's solar energy purchase agreement both contributed to fiscal year 2018 performance that reduced our overall greenhouse gas emissions 4% below last year's and 20% below our 2014 baseline to date. So the model of an aggregate power purchase agreement continues to see benefit in a manner that reflects our interest in seeking scales of impact once again. And so this is inspired by our collective commitment with Boston Medical and Post Office Square, the Climate Mayors Coalition, when they convened here in Boston, called upon leading members of the Mayors Network to combine their collective purchasing power using this model to reduce their energy costs and spark the creation of large-scale renewable energy projects across the country. I believe there are 28 cities that have signed up to this point. So stay tuned in terms of opportunities, again, for collective procurement. The last piece here on food is these are new efforts at MIT that we began in 2018. We brought together a group of stakeholders from MIT's operational and academic communities to explore the cultural, administrative, and environmental dimensions of the MIT food system. And this is a very complex dialogue, and it's complex in this lively urban environment like Cambridge, because the group was exploring strategies to currently address important issues of food security and sustainability while focusing on strategies such as building community, mindful eating through the design of food spaces, engage with our planners, access to healthy meals, procurement of sustainable food, and the reduction of food waste. So this is now just getting underway. And the final piece I'd like to share with you are our Pathways Sustainability leadership. And this is the most unique of these processes, has been the development of this model. And the primary element of the Pathways to Sustainability leadership idea is underlying it is the campus as a testbed for sustainability, as a testbed for sustainability, and as the center and model of organizational transformation for sustainability, and of course, lastly, an incubator of sustainability ideas and research. So we frame this leadership model as the aggregate of these 5 pathways and have sought to activate each of these around being an exemplar in terms of the model that we spoke about, a model for organizational transformation, a generator of research, an innovator of transformative education, and a thoughtful partner to the city and to our peers around the world. So a Sustainability Leadership Committee tasked with overseeing this implementation of the document is actually being launched just this week, and I'll look forward to updating you as to what emerges from that discussion over the next year. So in conclusion, our vision at MIT is to continues to be to educate this next generation of students to confront and solve these complex global challenges by leveraging the campus as a test bed for insight and problem solving. and to continue to engage our staff as lifelong learners who grapple with the complexity of sustainability in their daily work. So thank you very much. I'd like to now pass along to Steve March, Managing Director of Real Estate. Thank you.
Good evening, folks. My name is Steve Marsh. I'm the Managing Director for Real Estate for MIT's Investment Management Company. And if you've been to Kendall Square recently, I'd say you'd see a lot going on. And first of all, I'd say I appreciate all the work that everyone here has done along with us to create the vision for the changes on Main Street. I see a rendering here of one of the most anticipated changes to the square, and that is the construction of the Brothers Marketplace, the urban grocer that we're opening on at 1 Broadway. It's well under construction today. We expect it to be opened by the late summer of 2019 or the early fall of 2019. So we're very excited to deliver that amenity to the community. I think it was like the number one thing that was requested from everyone that we met with at the very beginning of the vision. We've also started the site prep and the foundation work for the Broad Canal Retail, which will allow us to engage the double-loaded corridor of retail on Broad Canal Way, as well as working on the site prep and foundation work for the residential tower in the parking lot at 1 Broadway. We all know that when industry and academia mix, we advance innovation, we advance science and technology, and we find solutions to some of the world's greatest problems. We've been working on that in Kendall for years. But our approach has also changed to be far more multidisciplinary and multidimensional, something we've learned from working with you and from planning staff in the city and the neighborhood. We see a real opportunity to strengthen our unique mixed-use district in Kendall Square, to create vibrant connections and a real sense of place, and we've been focused on that for several years now. We believe that Kendall Square can be a gateway to MIT for the community, and a gateway for the innovators as well as a mixing bowl in Kendall Square. We're focused on adding housing, innovation space, retail, sustainable environments, open space and program for the broader community to enjoy. Construction is progressing. As John had pointed out earlier, one of the very first buildings that we focused on was the grad housing. We heard it as a priority both in our Kendall work and while we were doing the Volpe zoning. The grad housing was essential. We made the first major project coming out of the ground in Kendall to be the grad housing. The second thing that is happening at the same time is proceeding on the underground garage south of Main Street, which will support the other buildings there. And you'll see the office building at 314 Main Street, which will house the MIT Museum, as well as Boeing's Autonomous Flight Division and a variety of other innovative tenants. Construction on buildings 2, 3, and 6 will follow as we work out all the logistics on these projects and develop these buildings. We clearly have to build the new graduate housing before we do anything with the other graduate housing site. And obviously the market will determine some of this activity and timing. Of course, when we're doing this, we recognize that it's not just about the buildings. The buildings are important, but we're also talking about the community. We want to highlight some of the community contributions we've been possible to make as a result of the Kendall and Volpe work. We've made $7 million in community benefit fund payments to support the not-for-profits in Cambridge, which helps carry out their essential work. We've made $1 million investment in the Grand Junction multi-use path, both at Galileo Way and funding for some of the stuff in moving forward on our land as well. $1.8 million in local Wi-Fi for underserved neighborhoods and in bike sharing. $500,000 for the Community Center Design Fund as we get ready on the Volpe site. And we are well underway for renovation for the Job Connector on Main Street, which we hope will be open in the spring. Throughout the process that we've had both in Kendall and Volpe, we've learned it's important to stay connected to the community. And it's an opportunity for us to meet new people, get new ideas, understand what the opportunities and concerns are of the residents in the abutting neighborhoods. We had 2 major events this year to help maintain these ties. We had our Volpe annual block party. We took it on the road this year and went to Ahern Park. It was actually interesting moving off the Volpe site. We get to meet more people, and I think people felt more welcome coming to some of their home turf, so it was actually useful. There were about 600 people who attended from every age, from toddlers up to elderly. And it was a great event. We've also had the Innovation Playground that was run during Hub Week, where we had 700 people come and experiment with innovative technologies right on site. And later that evening, many of them attended the public celebration, the groundbreaking for 314 Main Street. Before I give you an update on the new Department of Transportation Volpe building, which is really our first obligation at Volpe, I thought it would be helpful to review the associated community benefits. As you can see from the slide here, we have about $27 million for a community center and a job connector, $8.5 million for the community fund for not-for-profits that we're committing to, $8.5 million in the Grand Junction investment for the improvement of the multi-use path on our land, $8.5 million in transit improvements, $1 million for arts initiatives, and more importantly, 280 affordable units worth about $140 million, 20 middle-income units at $6 million, and the list does not include $26 million payments to the Affordable Housing Trust, nor new tax payments that will amount to about $20 million a year in Volpe. If I add this up, looking at the first 20 years of Volpe, it's over $600 million worth of benefits that accrue to the citizens of Cambridge. I think we're proud of this. We've worked together with you folks to establish this program, and we're happy to make Kendall Square more inclusive by providing diverse housing, youth and employment services, bike and pedestrian travel, support for city not-for-profits, open space, local retail, and providing for the fiscal stability of Cambridge. Regarding the new Volpe facility, the final design of the new Volpe has progressed consistent with the concepts shared several years ago. The image on the left shows the site and massing during the zoning process and the models that we used, and the image on the right shows the current design. As you can see from the model we have here, the site sizing, massing, connections are essentially the same, and we've preserved a critically important connection from the neighborhood through the site at Volpe to connect up to the open space that will be in the exchange parcel and ultimately through to Kendall Square. We know we have work to do with you folks on all of that. Here's a site plan on the left. And although this project is not subject to local design review, as you know, it's a federal government project, we've shared the zoning ordinance and the design guidelines with the GSA and the design team at SOM to ensure that the new site and the building was compatible as possible with local principles. Any exceptions were related to conflicts with the specific Volpe research requirements, security requirements for the building and the perimeter security on the site, and specific design objectives of the GSA architectural leadership. The image on the left shows the site design. It will have more than 40% open space. It'll add 100 new diverse native species trees to the site with 40% increase in caliper inches over the current existing. As most are aware, the construction of the government building will require the removal of private trees. We expect 21 trees to be removed that are in conflict with the footprint or the security perimeter. 20 of these are Norway maples and one is a red oak. In addition, there are 2 city street trees that need to be removed to accommodate vehicular access on Binney Street. The image on the right shows the east facade facing 5th Street, the new 5th Street connector. Dramatic multi-level lobby creates some visually interesting views from the publicly accessible walkways that will be on that landscaped area to the east side of the building. All the mechanical systems are enclosed in an architecturally integrated penthouse to minimize the visual and noise pollution. The building and the site were designed prioritizing sustainability. This will be a LEED Gold version 4 at a minimum. The orientation and massing of the building was designed to maximize energy efficiency. It was trying to maximize natural lighting, taking advantage of rooftop solar and best practices for stormwater management, among others. The project consolidates 6 buildings on the site and the multiple surface lots into one building. It reduces parking on the site from 554 spaces down to 320 and puts them below grade with the exception of a few visitor spots at grade. It has over 100 bike parking spaces added to the site. The wonderful landscape is designed by Reed Hildebrand, providing a seamless connection from the neighborhood to the Volpe headquarters, ultimately to the exchange parcel and through to Kendall Square. Maya Lin has been engaged and has worked on integrating an art piece into the landscape on the east side, which is a visual representation of the Doppler effect creating undulating grassy mounds depicting sound waves moving through the site. We think there's a little bit of fun and enjoyment in that. The design underwent a rigorous and extensive federal government review. It's part of the GSA's Design Excellence Program. It considered the local design guidelines. It included peer reviews and was ultimately approved by the GSA's regional architect and the GSA's chief architect for the United States. The building is 212 feet in height, which is below the 250 feet established in the zoning regime. It incorporates a setback at 88 feet and includes appropriate scaled cornice similar to adjacent buildings. I think Biogen is around 80 feet. Construction is scheduled to start later this year and be complete in 2022. I do want to note 2 additional renovations that are occurring on Main Street. As you know, we have a broad experience renovating historic buildings and working closely with the Cambridge Historic Commission. We are now completing the restoration of 139 Main Street, the former American Red Cross. We've designed this building to accommodate smaller tenants in the market, making sure the entrepreneurs are not crowded out, and we're providing capacity for them. And in addition, we are in planning and design for a major rehabilitation of 730, 750 Main Street, focused likely on innovation ecosystem and startups. And just like 610, its neighbor, 610 Main Street, at 730, 750 will be providing active retail along that street front, which needs some activation. So I will thank you at this point and pass this on to Sarah.
Thank you and good evening, everyone. This is our last section, you'll be glad to know. But it's a very exciting one, and we're happy that you continue to ask us about our educational initiatives because we love to tell you about it and to engage in them. This first picture is from the awards night at CRLS. If you've never been to that awards night, you should go. It's just a great triumph for all the students who are receiving scholarships. And so this is the night that we announce our MIT Scholarship Awards. MIT has about 120 K-12 programs that are run out of about 40 different departments, organizations, and groups on our campus. We've outlined them in the report, so I know you've had a chance to look at those. They come out of our Office of Engineering Outreach, the Cambridge Science Festival, the MIT Summer Youth Employment Program, the MIT Museum, Edgerton Center, Lemelson Center, Beaverworks, Office of Digital Learning, and more. But this one, the MIT Impact Scholarship Program, it is a real highlight for us. And the way that this works is that we put out a question to CRLS students and to Prospect Hill Academy students and also CCSC students, asking them about their personal impact that they bring to their family, to their community, to their neighborhood, to society, and on the basis of their answers, not on the basis of GPA or test scores or anything, we select awardees for this $10,000 scholarship. We received 85 applications in our first year, which was 2 years ago. We had 100 applications last year. It's very tough to choose 10 students, but we find the answers to the questions just absolutely incredible, how students are working with homeless individuals around refugee issues, supporting immigrants, and all kinds of topics. Another program I want to share with you is our Pathways to Invention program. This was launched in conjunction with the Engine in 2016, as Israel mentioned. It's led by the Lemelson MIT program and is currently operating at the Fletcher Maynard Academy. So right now, Lemelson staff are serving on the school's leadership team to help guide programming activities. They collected donations for the school's new makerspace in the basement. That's what's shown on the left there. They've been working with teachers and staff to relaunch Fletcher Maynard's Sisters with a Dream after-school program with 20 girls attending the program currently. In addition, an MIT student with our Public Service Center is assisting Lemelson with Scratch coding instruction and hands-on invention activities at Fletcher Maynard. And a highlight in 2018 involved a field trip to MIT by the FMA Sisters with a Dream to spend 30 minutes with Dr. Shirley Ann Jackson, president of Rensselaer Polytech Institute, and that's shown on the right. But Pathways to Invention is not limited at the elementary level. It's been working to reach the middle school grades as well through events like the one shown on the left, where young women are hacking the dome at a family STEAM night. This is an event organized by Lemelson, the city, and the Cambridge Public Schools. And the Pathways effort is now focusing on community needs at the high school level and above. And I think, as you know, Lemelson's work in the community has led to the formation of the Foundry Consortium, where the community is helping the city and the Cambridge Redevelopment Authority to develop a new center for STEM and the arts at 101 Rogers Street in East Cambridge. That's the Foundry shown on the right. The Foundry is scheduled to open in early 2021. Residents will have access to a wide array of program offerings, as well as a maker space, performance space, and more. And probably the most exciting thing that's happening in this realm for us recently is that we have a new K-12 outreach administrator, Dr. Rohan Kandargi, and I just, if you don't mind, would like to introduce Rohan. Could you stand up for a second? There's Rohan. Rohan serves as a proactive liaison between MIT and the Cambridge community. He returns to Cambridge after serving at Gonzaga University, where he designed and led STEAM education programs for the second largest school district in the state of Washington. And then building on that knowledge, Rohan will draw insight from his experience as a middle school science teacher in Quincy and as an academic geoscientist at BU to help create collaborations and partnerships within the Cambridge K-12 system. And he's already off and running, working on collaborative projects with the city, with CRLS, the Moore School, Tutoring Plus, and the Cambridge Public Library. So I encourage you to seek Rohan out, talk with him about your ideas for K-12 outreach and programming with MIT. That concludes our presentation, and we'll be very happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I think we're going to do the same thing. We'll take actual factual questions now that they might be able to address, and then save larger discussion points for after everyone has had a chance to go, and we can discuss together. So, any questions for MIT right now? No? You answered all of the questions already. Okay. All of the factual questions, my colleagues quickly assured me. So stick around. There will be more discussion later. Okay. Then next on the agenda is Leslie. So if Leslie wants to come up and set up, we can do that.
Sure, of course. Thanks. Well, my colleague Matt Brownell logs on and plugs in here. Let me introduce the aforementioned Matthew Brownell is the Director of Campus Planning. I'm John Sullivan, Director of Communications at Lesley University. We are joined here tonight by Sarah Woolens, who is the Coordinator for Sustainability, Mary Lou Bott, Vice President for Administration and Operations, and Mark Collins, Director of University-Owned Real Estate and Operations. Perhaps I didn't vamp long enough. We're there.
Almost there.
As always, it is an honor and pleasure to be with you.
Madam Chair and members of the Planning Board. And we will endeavor not to try your patience with going too long. We'll be sure to keep it under 20.
There we go. All right.
I yield the floor.
Thank you. Let me just. I'm not going to try to mess too much with that mic. Thank you very much. It's nice to see some familiar faces again. I'm going to take you through a few brief points here. I want to get to the projects section because that's where most of the excitement is for us this year. Just to refresh, here's our campuses. Three. One that is now whole on the Brattle campus, which we'll discuss a little bit here. And we're all connected, a short 10-minute walk from each, and we have a shuttle that runs between all of them, 2 shuttles. We've added a couple buildings, and we still have about the same number of off-site locations. Roughly the same number of students and faculty and staff. Some of the non-degree students are now being counted in Boston, so they don't show up on this slide. The main focus this past year has been on these points here. So the first one, athletics and recreation space. We made some improvements to we redid the Medford High School gym. And so that's, we've got a new floor in there, a new scoreboard, all the works, and that takes care of our basketball, men's and women, and volleyball, men's and women. We're still working out the fields. We got an extension with BB&N, and we're still working on that piece, which has proved a little bit more difficult to figure out. But some good progress there, which hopefully we can report on next time. And then the Brattle campus development, which I'm going to spend a little bit more time on a little bit later here, but just a brief intro to that. In July, we were able to purchase the rest of the Episcopal Divinity School buildings as they have now moved to New York and are part of Union. We continue to make investments in infrastructure and maintenance. You'll see on our slides here, that's where a lot of our little points of activity continue to be. And we finally now have a new strategic plan, and we are working now on implementation plans, the campus plan being one of them, and we've started data gathering for that process. So just a brief overview, here's where the dots are for all the projects work that we've been doing on each of the campuses, and we'll zoom in. If some of this looks familiar, it's because that's pretty much the exact same slide as last year. We were just wrapping this up as we were about to present to you, so it's done now, and it's actually quite a popular location. Also, this is done, the animation studios. We're pretty excited about this piece. This is about 11,000 square feet in the lower level of University Hall. Just to back up there, the new green, dark green there is the animation area. And this connects with the other side of our lower level, which is all senior studios and some space that we had, our first kind of part of moving the College of Art and Design over to Cambridge. So it connects that piece, and it really, we're excited because it is really kind of a growth area for us and really helps distinguish us in this field of VFX studios. Also, we expanded science labs. This is a picture of a science lab that we added more hoods to so we could expand our biology instruction. Moving over to the Doble campus, most of the work here has really just been in maintenance. We had some work done over at 29 Mellon, which is really just paint and carpet and that kind of stuff. Some minor wiring, that sort of thing. We're replacing our roofs, which are all pretty old on this campus, and we're taking them one at a time here. So we replaced Whitehall the year before and did some of the windows. We finished that work with the other side of windows, and then we replaced the Doble Hall, which is that number 4 there. We're looking at now the interior part of that building and replacing the elevator. It was nice that it had an elevator, but a lot's changed in code since 1971, so we're going to fix that. And then moving now to probably the most exciting part is the Brattle campus. And I'm going to spend a little time on each of these projects that we're looking at, but just a brief overview. I'm not going to spend time on this in the next slide. The electrical grid replacement that we've been slowly making progress on is done now, which hallelujah. The safety, we've continued to do safety enhancements. Sherrill Hall, which is the one that you see 6, 7, and 17 all kind of scattered over. EDS, when they moved out, that's where a lot of their books were, and so we also got a couple more classrooms out of that. And we spent a little time at the beginning just outfitting those classrooms so that we could make use of them for our business management division. So we have a computer lab there and some more group space for them to work. And then also we worked on the elevator, replaced that, and did the cooling tower in that building. So the Brattle campus, couldn't be more excited. This is really a unique opportunity for us. With EDS's departure, now we're really trying to figure out how does this fit with the rest of Leslie, and how can we reimagine our presence there as now the only player in town there. So the buildings highlighted in purple there are the ones that we just acquired, and we had already been sharing Sherrill Hall, which with them, but that's probably the biggest one. Wright Hall really didn't have a whole lot. That's the one here in the middle of everything. That's a 1911 building, and really didn't have a lot that we needed to do to get that up and running, just some paint and wiring and stuff. So we thought the first thing we could do there is bring over our College of Liberal Arts and Sciences there, and we moved also our business management division. So that's now their home. Which is exciting. And we're now also looking at 4 Berkeley, which is a 1852 building, as our new president's house, which is exciting because 12 Kirkland, where we used to have it, was disconnected from the rest of the campus, and so now we'll be right next to it. So we think that's a good adjacency. Most of the house was in good condition. It needed some roof replacement, and the HVAC system was pretty old too, so we've been making improvements there. This is a picture on the 3rd floor of Sherrill Library, Sherrill Hall, which is a ghost town right now. It's really great if you want to do quiet studying. No one is there. No books are there. So we're trying to figure out what we can do there, and we're excited about how we can maximize the use of this building. So our thoughts right now is that we want to do a project to renovate those floors, but we also see it as an opportunity to refresh the aesthetics there on the inside, make it feel more welcoming. We've had some ideas of putting a cafe maybe there and turning it into a learning commons, and figuring out what kinds of uses could really be complementary to that. And so we are in the process now of hiring an architect to help us with that. One of the next ones we think on the not too distant horizon would be the chapel. This is a beautiful building, 1868 Ware and Vent Brute building, which right now we know there's some things that need to happen there, like restrooms, sprinklers, and vertical circulation that doesn't involve a winding staircase. But we think this could be a really great asset for we're calling multi-arts, so expressive arts, drama, music, also visual arts as well. So we're going to do a planning and feasibility study here in the not too distant future to figure out the extent of deferred maintenance that we need to do and how we could use this. Other 2 buildings which we love are beautiful buildings. We just don't know exactly what we want to do with them yet, and we know have lots of deferred maintenance. Pretty much from top to bottom, roof to basement, we're looking at lots of work. But this is a picture of inside that building, and you'll see some wires there. That's from a drop ceiling. So this double height space is covered up right now, and so there's so much potential for uncovering and revealing some of the beauty of this building, so we're excited about that. This is another interior space which is usable right now, but is attached to the rest of the building, which was used for living space, which doesn't meet any codes and will need to be looked at more closely. And moving on now, transition into sustainability. We continue to make progress in this area, and we're now up to 71%, despite even increasing we've reduced our greenhouse emissions by 71%, despite even increasing our square footage over the last year. We are also signed a new electric contract containing 100% renewable energy certificates. And we're starting to look at, in this next phase of work in this year, re-examining our buildings and seeing how well they're working, how they're designed, and if they're actually, we think there's some growth there because some of them aren't working the way they should be designed to work. This is an area of concern for us, frankly, with our waste diversion. We were seeing a good trend here, and I think there's been some changes globally that we're starting to see locally now, and a lot of it's in our recycling is contaminated, and we need to get a handle on that. Some of it, I think, is re-education. Some things that people are throwing and thinking they're doing a good job throwing away are not recyclable anymore. Or not going to be, so we've had a lot of contaminated recycling, which we're trying to figure out how we can get a better handle on that. So that's an area that we have to work on. Our transportation, we've continued to see increases in our shuttle use, and we met our single occupancy vehicle rate last year. And then moving on to an area which I admittedly don't have as much familiarity with, but I think is really great, the work that we do in the community. So Sue Kuzak, a faculty member there in our School of Education, and has been really pioneering this, our STEAM Learning Lab, which is a makerspace, and has really been engaged with Cambridge Public Schools and with the community for a number of years now. And working not only to help educators, but also provide opportunities for students in the community. We participate in Cambridge Science Festival, and she's also been appointed to the STEAM Advisory Committee, is a member of the Foundry Consortium, which we'll talk about in a second, which MIT also already mentioned. The Creativity Commons is also led by Martha McKenna, is also a piece of that partnership with the CRA and MIT Lemelson MIT to work on the Foundry. We've been engaged with the community to figure out what kinds of uses they're interested in putting in there with a STEM and arts focus. And then we continue to be engaged in sidewalk math and several other types of projects with the community, with schools. And Cambridge partnerships also extend to Leslie Art and Design. In addition to the work I've already described, they're involved with 50+ community partnerships. They have a quarterly meeting with our dean, that advisory group, and with our director of community engagement. We have lots of engagement opportunities, whether it's workshops or ways of giving scholarships to high school students here in Cambridge, or also events, which I'll just mention briefly. The MICE event, the Massachusetts Independent Comics Expo, was in excess of 3,500 fans this year, which was pretty exciting. And when I always talk to the facilities group in our department and tell them that MICE is coming, they get a little nervous, but you know, it's a great event. So without anything else, I'd like to open it up for questions, and thank you very much for your time.
Hey. Any questions, factual questions for Leslie?
Question.
Yeah, Ted.
With the new buildings you've acquired on the Brattle campus, are any of them dormitories?
So the one that, no, not really. The one that I mentioned that was used for living space would have to be, we don't know what to do with it right now. I mean, there were a few beds there. I think, I don't want to give you an exact figure, but it was less than 15 and more than 6. So somewhere in that area.
We don't have any. Yeah. We have a dormitory there, but it's one of the buildings we've owned since. Yeah.
Right. And with the acquisition of the additional buildings, do you envision expanding the size of your student body?
Expanding the size of our student body is always probably a welcome thing. I don't have an answer for that either. I think what we're doing right now with the campus plan and figuring out some of the implementation plans for our strategic plan will get to maybe some of those answers. But right now, I think the figures that we showed on our enrollment are, about where they are right now.
We've shown a pretty steady enrollment for undergraduate and reason for optimism in the graduate level, although typically we don't house graduate students. It's just not our profile. But we are managing growth, and we'll be able to have the flexibility to deal with it, but I don't anticipate needing new dorms.
Just to follow up on that, so in all the planning you're doing, you're not going to plan to house any more of your students?
That's, yeah, why don't you take that?
Sorry. So I think where we're at right now is we have extra beds available on the campus. We have a number of our students. We have a lot of expansion with a program that we have with Bunker Hill Community College. We have over 300 undergraduates at Bunker Hill working with us there, so that so a lot of our undergraduate students are not in Cambridge as they used to be. And secondly, as we look at the graduate programs, we're looking at more and more online. So we see our growth in online and also through these community college programs. We also have one on Cape Cod, and we have one on the North Shore as well. So we think all of those areas, that's where most of the growth will be.
Okay, thank you very much. So again, our plan at this point is we're going to now hear from Harvard. We'll do the same thing where they give their presentation, we'll ask factual questions, probably take a break at that point, and then we can do the kind of the bigger picture questions and discussion amongst the board. We can take a 5-minute break while Harvard sets up. I think everybody is returned, so we're ready to get started with the last of the formal presentations tonight. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here and to give you an update on Harvard's Cambridge campus. My name is Alexandra Afyong. I'm here from the Harvard Planning Office, and I'm joined by a number of my Harvard colleagues who will be not only presenting but also available to answer questions tonight. So I wanted to just remind everyone the kind of essential mission of Harvard University is to develop leaders in many disciplines who are going to push the boundaries of human knowledge, who are going to address the greatest challenges of our time. And that's the core principles that Harvard abides by of veritas, truth, excellence, and opportunity. These same ideals are the ones that that set the stage for how we plan our campus. So that's an important first reminder. So Harvard is also guided by some key programmatic drivers that inform how we meet our diverse facility and space needs over time. So first of all, we want to create a very inclusive campus where all members of the community feel a sense of belonging. We seek to strengthen the core teaching and research mission, invest in sciences and engineering. We remain committed to a very strong liberal arts education, and that includes arts and humanities. We seek to maintain a residential campus, and that's an important driver. And finally, we want to strengthen our campus in terms of common spaces and landscape and cultural amenities. So whenever Harvard makes physical changes to our campus, we have a set of campus planning principles that we abide by. We have a commitment to design excellence. We want to ensure that there's connectivity on our campus for all modes. We value and treasure our open space system. We seek to maximize the highest and best use of our existing facilities. And you're going to see a lot of the projects we talk about tonight are repurposing and renewing existing facilities on our campus. We have an amazing historic campus that we seek to preserve. And when we make changes to the campus, we really look to the campus context, the character that exists, and ensure that we're being respectful of that. Sustainability is, of course, very important. And finally, we want to respect the community context within which we sit. So just a little context about how we see our campus and the way that we look at it. So, of course, the Cambridge campus is north of the river and centered around Harvard Square. You can see the T-stop. The campus hangs on sort of a ladder structure that has some primary north-south spines and many secondary connections. And that's sort of the essential skeleton of the campus. So our institution is a very large and diverse and decentralized institution. We have not only the college and 12 graduate schools, but we have other research institutes and museums and administrative units, and they all function kind of individually, and we come together as a university, but it's highly decentralized. In terms of our uses, there's a wide range of uses on the Cambridge campus. You can see, for example, in red are our residential facilities, which are very prominent, as well as our blue academic, and the orange are sciences. It's a 24-hour living, learning campus with a wide range of things going on. So we also look at our campus in terms of the geographical districts. So, of course, Harvard Yard is the symbolic heart of the university, right in the center. Our North Campus is where a lot of our sciences are, as well as our law school and divinity school. The Arts Corridor is centered along Quincy Street, and that's where a lot of our art and design facilities are. The river houses, of course, are a lot of our housing. The West Campus is where the Education School and the Radcliffe Institute is located. And finally, the Northwest Campus is centered on the Radcliffe Quadrangle. So open space is a very important part of our campus. The physical character of our campus, which has evolved over more than 3 centuries, is formed by the relationship between buildings and open space. And in fact, open space represents more than half of our campus land in Cambridge. And we have more than 5,000 trees. And also important is just the diversity of open spaces. We invest a lot and put a lot of energy into making sure that this open space resource is allows movement through the campus, allows enjoyment of everyday activities, and is programmed throughout the year seasonally, and you can see the diversity of spaces. So in terms of our architecture, I think there's a common reputation that Harvard University is all about red brick buildings, and of course we do have many beautiful Neo-Georgian and Neo-Georgian brick buildings, but we also have many other types of architectural styles, and you can see here that the colors represent different styles. Everything from colonial architecture and Georgian and neoclassical to many examples of modern and contemporary design on our campus. So we have a number of current projects that you probably read about in the report. Tonight we're going to touch on a handful of them. And we're going to start with the Smith Campus Center in Harvard Square. So we are so thrilled that this building, this project was completed last fall. It opened, and we believe it has been very well received by the Harvard community, by the Cambridge community, and we hope that you've already come to visit it. But if you haven't, we're going to walk you through the building. It was really a reimagining of both interior and exterior spaces to create a welcoming and vibrant center for the university. And it's the first and second floors have been transformed. They're all open to the public, and they this is the when you enter the building, this is sort of the front door to the campus. This is the Safra Welcome Pavilion, and it is it's a dynamic entrance to the university. We have put everything there that someone arriving would need, including information and tickets and tours and restrooms and food and lots of seating and chess tables. And the outdoor extension of the Welcome Center is this revitalized plaza, which is in the heart of Harvard Square. And we have new trees and new pavings and lots of seating and really cool chess tables. So this has been bringing the life back to the center of Harvard Square. So the arcade has always been the central organizing feature of the Smith Campus Center, and it remains so today. But if you go in, it's a startling transformation with its planted walls and its new food venues and its lots of seating. It's a beautiful space. The heart of common spaces for the Smith Campus Center is what we call Harvard Commons, and this is a multi-tiered, light-filled space that's very flexible, and on a day-to-day basis, you'll often see it like this, which is a study space, a hangout space, but it also flexibly transforms to accommodate lectures or performances. This is the final class meeting of CS50 at the end of the last semester. And then finally, on the second floor, there is what used to be a mechanical roof is now what we see as sort of like an oasis in Harvard Square, open to the public, private garden feel. So you're welcome to come here, bring your lunch, have a seat. It's really a special space. So moving across the street to Harvard Yard, we have a few projects to touch on. We are planning a renovation of Houghton Library. This is a special collections library that the university is really looking to make it more of an accessible building in many ways, both accessible from getting to the building and introducing a new landscaped pathway to the front entrance, but also making the collections and the exhibitions more accessible, more user-friendly, and something that people can take advantage of. Our oldest building on the campus, Massachusetts Hall, was just completed. We just completed a restoration of this building. This is a Georgian building from 1720. And we worked closely with the Cambridge Historical Commission to restore all the exterior elements, and as well as doing some well-needed maintenance and upgrades to building systems on the interior. Just across the quadrangle, if you just walked across that grass, we are now planning for the renovation of Harvard Hall, which is another very old building. It's from 1766. So this is a classroom building. And so this is a project, again, we'll be restoring the exterior elements, including the cupola and the brick and the brownstone elements, and just bringing the classrooms up to 21st century standards. So together, this is sort of one of the oldest quadrangles of not only the campus, but the city. And so it's just how we restore and invest in our historic resources. So outside of Harvard Yard, we are just completing a renovation of the Sackler building. So this is a building that previously housed art museum galleries that, of course, moved across the street. And so we have not only invested in a lot of the deferred maintenance, but also repurposed the building to serve as a new hub of art and design for the campus. We will have studios, repurposing former galleries into studio spaces, for example, for the Graduate School of Design and for the history of art and architecture, as well as art making spaces for the campus. So we've also included some new streetscape improvements. You can see that we've introduced some new windows, and most notably that big square that was on the front facade, so prominent, but never activated as the landing pad for the bridge to the Fog Art Museum, is now clear glass and allows beautiful views to Harvard Yard. So for almost a decade, we've been talking to you about investing in our undergraduate houses, and that initiative continues. It's a huge effort, but it's so important that we take these buildings that are 80 to 100 years old, have never been completely renovated, and take the time to do a comprehensive renewal of them and really caring about the historic details. So we are currently in the final phases of renewing Lowell House, which will be completed this summer. That's on the right. And we are looking ahead to, and that's the 5th house, we're looking ahead to the 6th Harvard House renewing for Adams House, which the first phase of that is Claverley Hall, which is pictured on the left. And that's going to be beginning this summer. So last fall, we were pleased to complete work on the new building at 1607 Massachusetts Avenue. This is a Harvard Law School building that is on the corner of Everett Street and Massachusetts Avenue. It was designed to have, it has ground floor retail, and the upper stories are Harvard Law School space that is supporting the clinical and experiential education for the law school and houses many of their public service programs. This was carefully designed to be a bridge between, a transition between the campus and the Massachusetts Avenue corridor to the north. At Harvard Divinity School, we are currently planning for a renovation of Andover Hall. This is a building from 1911. It's the only collegiate Gothic building we have on our campus, and it has not been renovated since it was built originally, not comprehensively. So there's a lot of deferred maintenance. There's also a lot of programmatic needs for the building to bring it up to meet the current Harvard Divinity School mission. So it's a project that will involve a small addition that will be interior to the campus, and will be restoring the historic features. So just looking across the river to Alston, we have a few projects that we just wanted to highlight. One is there is a new art lab building on North Harvard Street that is a 9,000 square foot building for experimental art making. We are in construction for the Science and Engineering Complex. That's slated to be completed in 2020, and that will be primarily teaching and lab space for the Paulson School of Engineering and Applied Sciences. The business school has recently opened their new facility, Klarman Hall, and this is a major convening space on the campus. And finally, we are in construction on a new district energy facility that will support the campus. With that, I am going to hand it over to Heather Henriksen from the Office for Sustainability. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chairperson, members of the board. Thank you. So I'll just start off and refresh a couple of big points and then get right into the building and capital project arena. So, our sustainability vision and plan is well documented. It was co-created with faculty, students, and staff in 2014. It's updated annually and reported on annually. And I've certainly presented on before, but as a framework, it is really about translating the research and teaching into practice, piloting on campus, proving it, innovating, scaling it, and then getting it beyond Harvard to help others in society address these global systemic sustainability challenges like climate. So with that, a couple of points about it. One, it's comprised of 4 goals, 8 standards, and 33 commitments. I certainly won't go through them all. On the goals part, one of the highlight goals for us, of course, is climate. And building upon our 2016 achievement of a 30% absolute reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, 40% if you didn't factor in growth, which was achieved, 26 of the 30%, I just would note, was achieved on the campus. So very little that was actually had to be addressed off the campus with renewable energy and offsets. So now we move into the next frontier, and we've begun planning the fossil fuel neutral by 2026 goal, and the fossil free by 2050 goal. We are actively engaging the city and others in that 2026 planning, and looking both doubling down what we can do on our campus, and then how do we think about helping others in the world, off-site, which obviously we're going to have to do collectively. So we're actively on that. On the 8 standards, and I'll talk mostly about the ones relating to buildings, but I just would add, we have green building standards, resiliency standards, and, healthful and sustainable food standards that we're just about to roll out, so I'll speak of that one. I think that's just a model that we try to use in all these things. We start with the research. We've got faculty from 6 schools involved in that. And then it's really a nexus of how do you create climate-friendly, actually delicious, and also healthful food out in the world. And again, the model is not just a pilot at Harvard, but as we launch this, we are launching this with one of the largest global providers of food, Restaurant Associates, so that they can also, we are pushing them to go farther in their work. So that's just an example. Again, I was asked to focus on the built environment and capital projects, so I certainly will do that. Just a moment, though, on the Framing for Living Lab. Again, we do that in many ways. Our office working with faculty on coursework, working on translating the research into practice and research projects, and then collaborating with faculty, but also bringing those faculty and students to our neighbors, including Cambridge. For instance, it's brought our work where we're co-chairing with Novartis the Net Zero Labs working group. So again, bringing researchers and student research into and what's happening operationally on our campus to inform how we help others do this and think about it in Cambridge. But again, focusing on the Living Lab and the capital projects, let me move on to that. So I'd say, we're focused on climate and throw in there resiliency and health in the built environment. To date, we've got about 130 LEED certified projects. We have the 1st and 4th LEED V4 certified projects in Massachusetts, again, as a pilot to try to help do it at our campus and help others do it. Our green building standards that were created in 2009 have been updated substantially. They get updated every year, but substantially in 2014 and 2017. And in 2014, just a couple of notes, we required in 2014 LEED V4. I think we were one of the first to do that, certainly in higher ed. And then we started to require material transparency. Tell us what's in things that we're buying, ingredients. And then also new measurement verification requirements to assess if we're building and renovating these spaces, are they really as energy efficient as the model said or not? And then again, continually tweaking them as we go forward, and also added in resiliency measures. In 2017, we actually, again, added in requirements mostly related to, again, next and best practice on climate, and then also requirements on material health and indoor air quality. And to that note, I'll just talk about, because it's a perfect living lab example, our Healthier Building Materials Academy, which we launched in 2016 with faculty from the School of Public Health, Medical School, and Engineering School. And I'll give you some examples about that. But how do we do that work? 4 things I'll say. We pilot. We've got about 30 major capital projects that have already done this. I'll give you an example of one that's open. And so we do it through piloting. Our approach is really to prove we can optimize for health, and not just for Harvard and in what we select. We're really trying to change upstream and change the marketplace to help others do this. It is a very, I tell you in this moment, high touch, specialized knowledge of science and materials. But I think, again, how we're approaching is we're really educating our architecture and design partners and doing it in partnership with them, and as well as our contractors and subcontractors and manufacturers. And that's having a ripple effect way beyond Harvard in the built environment. We are essentially teaching all these people that we work with how to do this and advancing on every project, sometimes quite transformatively. We're also working with standards organizations like the U.S. Green Building Council and the folks that do the Living Building Challenge, and making sure that the standards are grounded in the latest science. That is the biggest contribution that we can make, because they have work to do in that area. And they know, and they're excited to work with us. And then fourthly, we're really, as I said, it is still high touch, so we're partnering with folks who have been leaders as well at Google. In the private sector, last May, we announced a formal partnership with them on health in the built environment and capital projects. And we are working to replicate and scale the work we're doing on our campus and together create a roadmap that really will transform the marketplace and help others support them in doing this work. Because as I said, it is really, you make really different decisions if you don't understand the science and if you don't have, I think, the researchers to back up this work like we are lucky to have. So that, I'll give you a concrete example. Everyone loves concrete examples. So not surprising, our flagship project, which we started working on from a materials perspective as well, was about 3 years ago, and it's the Smith Campus Center. I think the couple things to note for replicability and hopefully helping Cambridge as well and others is everything we did on this project did not increase cost, did not impact schedule. We just got healthier products. And an example I'll highlight is furniture. We used a standard that is publicly open source that has been created by a nonprofit, the Healthy Interior Standard. 3,000 pieces of furniture at Harvard are in this project. I personally spoke to 22 major furniture manufacturers. 75% of them had never made furniture to this standard. They all did it. They all did it on time and for no more money. So it can be done. You know, it got replicated, those similar standards. And these are classes of chemicals like flame retardants, antimicrobials, the toxic stain and water treatments, the fluorinated ones. And then we replicated in other interior products, as you can see, and really focused on driving transparency. The other thing is everyone always asks, we'll just mention the 8 green walls. There are 8. They are 18 feet high, each of them, and up to 19 feet wide. They're quite large. They're hydroponic, technology, and thousands of interior plants. We have gotten so many comments from visitors, we hope you all have visited or will, of that the air quality in there feels better, and that people's moods are, from the natural daylighting, the trees and the green walls, really enhanced. And it is always, if you go, packed. So come visit. That's a tangible example of how we're doing this. Another, just to sort of stay on this theme, is that aligns to our holistic approach to built environment, bringing these things together: health, resiliency, climate. This is the same team that we worked with who did, I don't know if you heard about the COG effects and the green building science, but literally peer-reviewed science showing increased health and productivity in dollar terms of green buildings and better indoor air quality. This is something that maybe isn't reverberating as much as in cities and higher ed, but every CEO of every company we've ever connected with knows of these studies. So again, using the same playbook, they used our office as a pilot. Now it's in a couple of schools across campus. We're doing indoor air quality monitoring, but with an eye to actually making measurable differences in renovations and as well as operations. So that is really exciting work that connects all of these things together. Because we don't want to just make the spaces climate friendly, we want to make them resilient and healthier for occupants. People spend 90% of their time indoors, and most of the research is on outdoor air quality. So, and then to sum up again, sticking with the theme of the built environment and capital projects and what we're doing on innovation, this is House Zero, which is open and ready for tours. If you haven't been, we're delighted to do that. The goal of this project was to produce more energy in its lifetime that it took to create and operate. It really is a living lab for ongoing research, so it's not just, oh, it's net zero, let's just close it up and not do anything with it in the future. There are 300 sensors, for instance, in this building, collecting 17 million data points a day. And these, again, are around the energy use, and they're also about the health and the indoor air quality and other things impacting health. So we are constantly, we've got cross-disciplinary teams of researchers looking at this, and then hope to then be outputting with papers for you on thermal comfort materials and daylighting. It's intended to be zero carbon emissions, zero electric lighting during the day, which they've achieved. It has 100% natural ventilation, which is unusual, and it's, again, nearly zero energy for heating and cooling. So those are just, again, in the sticking to the realm of the built environment, some of our innovations and how we're translating the research into practice and really focusing on this area. There's a lot of work that we're doing, and we really look forward to your questions and how we can translate this to others and help. With that, I will turn it over to my colleague, Tom Lucy.
Good evening. My name's Tom Lucy. It's a pleasure to be here tonight, and it's a pleasure to talk to you about some of Harvard's engagements in the community. During the past several years, the board has asked for information about our engagements. I thought I'd feature with at least one slide something about Harvard's commitment to housing. Our commitment to housing isn't just housing our own students, but it's working in partnership with both the City of Cambridge and local community development corporations in a variety of different ways. The highlights I have up here are our 2020-2000 program that was started almost 20 years ago. It's a $20 million revolving loan fund that's administered to both community development corporations and through the city's Affordable Housing Trust. It's flexible money with no strings attached that as those organizations are cobbling together their financing, it's able to plug gaps and to be used in a way that would enable the project. So in some projects it's a lot of money, in some projects it's a little money. But it's proven to be very successful. It's been part of creating and preserving over 1,600 units since we started it here in the city of Cambridge. We also use it in Boston. When you look at the entire impact, it's been over 7,000 units of affordable housing created and preserved in greater Boston, mostly Boston and the city of Cambridge. We also work on areas of opportunity, and we stay in close contact with the city. You know, creating affordable housing in Harvard Square is very difficult. The land costs, the underlying land costs are so high that it's hard to do. But we've, through a couple of different opportunities, we've preserved more than 139 units of affordable housing that were set to expire, working with the city on that. So we're very proud of our efforts there. We're actually, as the 2020-2000 program is coming to an end, we've been in discussions with Aram and Chris Carter and others at the city of how we can renew that and what a new program would look like going forward. Getting right to some of our educational supports. If you look in the our document, there's a more exhaustive list, but I want to make it just a couple of high points. I know I'm the last speaker here and want to kind of get you out of this, but the point here is that one of the things that we're able to do is leverage our different schools, and we're lucky enough to have a graduate school of education. So we have programs and initiatives that support a child. Every single child that goes through the Cambridge Public Schools is supported by Harvard programs and initiatives as they matriculate through their experience in the schools, from kindergarten all the way through high school. We're also able to share with them our resources, our museums, our theaters, our laboratories, our classrooms, and high school kids take classes at the our extension school, and most of those are for free. And just kind of walking you through that to give you some highlights of what that looks like. We start off with preschool and kindergarten there's a program called Mind Matters. It's a family engagement program that supports educators and families, and it gives them the intellectual ability to understand what's happening with their children's brain development. The Alewife program, I wanted to feature that because that's a great example of our researchers working with curriculum coordinators at the elementary school level to come up with and develop science experiences. And after they developed that, they realized there was a technology gap. We were able then to step in and fill that technology gap by providing the public school system with the appropriate technology. On that theme of moving our way up now through the upper schools, you'll see a variety of programs here. When Cambridge moved to the middle school model a few years ago, they asked us to come in and help them and really support what was happening at the middle school level as they moved to that. The one I really want to point out too that we're very proud of is the 7th graders. Our project teaches at the center of CPS's college identity program. Every single 7th grader in Cambridge comes to our campus, spends a day, and we've developed a series of programs that they meet with students. We bring a diverse set of students so they can see people like themselves. We have them interact with faculty and spend the whole day on our campus, and we're able to measure the difference now from when kids were in 7th grade and what they thought going in to now, and it is working, and they can see themselves at any college. So we're very proud of that one. 8th grade, same thing. It kind of builds on one another. Every 8th grader comes to our campus on a couple of different occasions. The highlight of one of them is that the Science and Showcase Engineering program that we do that we're very proud of. And finally, at the high school, we do a whole variety of different things. Some are discrete programs for specific cohorts of students. Others address some of the issues that have come up. The one I'll point out, you know, over the last few years, people have wanted to connect Cambridge kids with what's happening in the Cambridge economy. We came up with the Harvard Life Science Outreach Program. We're bringing more than 500 high school students to our campus, getting them in our labs, working with the biology teachers to understand and improve the science experience for Cambridge students. The other two at the end, we fund and run the summer school for the high school, which helps with the school department's achievement gap. We get about 300 students every year that participate in that. So, and then finally, the Harvard Crimson Academy. This is something that we're really proud of. Again, this takes academically gifted, economically challenged students. We stay with them for 4 years. They come in the summers, they spend the week on our campus. We give them a stipend so they don't have to worry about working. We support them through their school years. And at the end, we stay with them. We give them a scholarship, help them with their college applications. 99% of the kids that have come through since 2004 have got into a college and have succeeded and graduated from the college. So that's really a transformative program for those kids that we can help going through there. Not on the slides, but we certainly also help with professional development for teachers. We have a lot of professional development programs. We have scholarships that allow Cambridge teachers to attend the Graduate School of Education for free. Every year we also place a doctoral level student with the superintendent, and he or she gets to choose the program and the support that they give, but we fund that doctoral student for the entire school year to work for the superintendent on a project that he or she would see helpful. So that's some highlights. That's the conclusion of our program, and I'm sure we're here and happy to take questions.
Okay.
Additional resources if you're looking for more information.
Great. Okay, we'll do factual questions for Harvard, and then I think we'll see if there's any public comment, and then we can have board discussion. So, questions for Harvard? No? Okay. Swati, no one signed up? Okay, so is there anyone in the audience who would like to make a comment to the board? Okay. Mr. Williamson, we can start with you. The usual public comment rules. Please state and spell your name, give your address, and you'll have 3 minutes to share your comments.
Thank you. James Williamson, 1000 Jackson Place, Cambridge. Well, first of all, I appreciate all the work that went into all these presentations. I did notice, and I think this applies to all of them, that there was a tendency to lump together some of the activities that may include not just Cambridge, but also, like in this last one, the special, you know, the scholarship, the support, and it was Cambridge, Somerville, and Boston. So not that it's not good to be doing it in other communities as well, but I think it would be important and useful and important to break it out so that you can actually see, well, okay, so how many are actually the Cambridge, what's the Cambridge component of some of these? And I think that applies. I think I picked that up, and I won't go into each and every example for all three. Secondly, I know this is not about the financial health of the institutions, and of course, I don't think two of them have to worry very much about that. But insofar as it may affect the planning and a sense of, you know, where things, how likely it is to move in the directions that have been outlined here, I think there may be a reason to get a little more information from Lesley University about their current financial, how they see their current financial situation as it relates to their planning. that could affect what they're doing in the city. I have to say, I really think MIT ought to be ashamed about their ongoing relationship with Mohammed bin Salman, and think something ought to be done about that. Finally, as somebody who is very involved in Harvard's plans for a Smith Center, I'm not saying that there aren't people who are quite happy with aspects of it. I have to say I'm disappointed with how it has ended up looking on the outside in the plaza area, and I hope that people at Harvard will be willing to, and I think there's some indication, in fact, that they may be from conversations I've had, but I would really hope that, want to believe that they'd be willing to take a look at a couple of features. I think the built-in chess tables, when they're there, take up too much of the seating area outside. I don't think that's a necessary feature there, and you could still accommodate the chess players. I was disappointed at the width of the poles that were put in, but I don't guess much can be done about that. And I think there needs to be some little bit of a bounding, something that will provide some sense of differentiation between the sidewalk and the seating area, so that it's not just one straight, flat, at-grade space there without any differentiation, where you can feel a little bit of a separation if you're sitting in what I hope could be an improved seating area. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to comment on any of the reports? Going once, twice. I see no hands. Okay. So then I will turn to my colleagues on the board. This is the part where we get to open it up to the bigger picture questions, and everyone will get their chance to comment, to throw questions out there that they'd like the universities to think more deeply about, to the extent there's follow-up or the universities need more time to research or think about or frame a response to. We can always get another night, and we've done this in the past, had a night for follow-up discussion with them if there are things that need responses. But this is kind of our chance to actually take a look at the big picture on for all of the universities who've shared tonight. So anyone want to kick us off with comments, thoughts, questions, ponderings? Tom.
Well, yeah, no. And I won't promise this will be any better than the State of the Union, but I have learned after being on the board for almost 5 years now that it's good to go first, because everybody else says such smart things. You have to come up with something smarter. It gets harder and harder as the night goes on. I'm a firm believer that anchor institutions are key to building strong communities, and we're really rich in those anchor institutions, as much as I'd like to think that the Mug and Muffin was an anchor institution that's come and gone. And I was musing with Hugh a little bit before we started, okay, without Harvard and MIT, we're a city on a river, and what city might that be? Maybe we would be Everett, and we'd be talking to a casino owner tonight about community impacts and benefits, rather than the four institutions that we heard from tonight. So I'm very aware of that, but also aware of this situation, this conversation about town and gown, and why are we here? Really to measure the impacts on the city, and to work together to build a city and to support each other. An example of that, for instance, is the addressing of climate change. We're really anxious to figure out what you're learning and how we might apply that to our city from our side. Obviously, there is rubs between the institutions and ourselves, and I think by working on those rubs, we can, and working on that tension, a little bit of tension, some good can come out of it. We definitely have different missions, but we're intertwined. Our fates are intertwined. That's very, very apparent to at least this board member, and I think my fellow board members. So your villages within our city, and I sort of see my mission as to try to make sure that we feel welcome there, and that you let us in. And I firmly believe that when the public does and the real world does enter the academy, that that brings you face to face with truth, and you'll be better. So I'm really interested in breaking down any barriers and promoting inclusion in what you've done. Now, I want to get to the specific institutions, and I guess I'll just take them in order. Some thoughts. First, Holt International Business School, obviously growing immensely. A lot of description about the strength of your diversity. There were kind of remarkable statistics. I just wonder how that diversity, in fact, rubs off on Cambridge if you're more like a hotel and people are here only briefly. So I'd be interested in figuring that out. You're obviously in growth mode. I've got some answer to that's actually an international impact and maybe isn't so much on Cambridge, but that's the heart of the story that I was hearing there. Next we go to MIT. I noticed that on page 7 of the report that I reviewed prior to the hearing, the transportation percentages, despite efforts, and a lot of words in there explaining all the ways you're promoting alternative ways of getting to and from the campus, that there's virtually no change statistically. And I know that must bug the engineers amongst you to kind of figure out, after all that effort, there's still no more bikers. Still, everybody is caught in their old habits. So I'd like some reflection on that and what can we do to try to move that. There was a reference relative, starting with transport's odd for me, but starting a reference to the MIT Sustainability Data Pool. I hope that's available to us. It was not clear from the report whether that's a publicly available data pool. I hope you can share it. Yes, your campus is a lab. Come back to a recurring theme. It feels like just yesterday we had this conversation. You own about a mile front of the river, and the impact of your campus, the runoff, the water, and its effect on the river would be something that I think we should be concerned about and want to be sure that you're conscious of. How many Cambridge, Ringe, and Latin students are attending MIT? I appreciate the $10,000 scholarships. Harvard, I note, has 16 students from Cambridge, Ringe, and Latin. Lesley gives full scholarships to 2 students with a much smaller student body. And I was thinking about Goodwill Hunting and how much better MIT was when Matt Damon went there, and just thinking that inspired me to ask that question about whether there shouldn't be an initiative to make room for the local students. And I'm sure the answer will come back if they can get in. Of course, we'll admit them, but your standards of admission are rightfully high, but still the citizens of Cambridge and the students of Cambridge who have a lot to offer may not have some of the advantages of your other applicants. So I'd like some consideration there. That moves me. Oh, one last thing on transportation. I do commute through your campus on foot every day safely during the winter because of the actual use of chemicals. Sodium chloride, I guess, is the right chemical designation. Salt, an awful lot, tons of salt on the sidewalks, and I wonder about the environmental impacts of all of the salt that facilities spreads. That brings me to Lesley. I have to thank Lesley. Last year you talked about a tree survey, and this is where we learn from each other. Trees were a concern then, but now a real concern in the city of Cambridge, inspired by that tree survey. And actually your sister organizations have focused on trees this year as well. I hope that MIT and Harvard have both completed the kind of rigorous survey that you did. I'd also like to know, what did you learn from that, and how can you help us, because we have a tree crisis, at least as I understand it, from a very, very robust conversation going on publicly in the community. So I'd have to say on Harvard, and maybe I was running out of energy here, but a mission of truth. Your campus is also a bona fide living lab in sustainability. I'm proud of that. I did say, however, one year famously in the Green Olympics and the Sustainability Olympics, I was giving MIT the silver medal, but I think they've caught up with you. Given the presentation I got tonight, and I think we have to understand that we've got two global leaders in trying to figure out an incredibly intractable problem. What we do know here about sustainability is the solution has got to be district-wide. It's got to be community-wide. It's bigger than either of your campuses. Great experimental fields, but we're only going to figure this out together, city, campuses, state, and ultimately the nation. I think that's the end of my speech making. I don't know. I didn't get longer than the State of the Union, but that's all that occurs to me right now. Thank you.
Okay. Corinne.
If the test is going to get harder, I would like to go earlier. So most of my comments are directed to Holt, Harvard, MIT, and Leslie all together. Thank you so much for the great presentations and for all the great work that you're doing in Cambridge. Many of my questions have been touched on by Tom, but just like we can design waste out of the system, as someone mentioned earlier, we can design inequality out of our systems as well, and I'm thinking about economic inequality, housing security, food security, and access to education when I'm talking about inequality specifically. So I'll be sure to submit a thorough list of questions, but I think about things like diversity and how it rubs off on the community. What do your museum offerings have as far as diversity? If kids from my community who are Haitian or Latino go to the art museums, are they going to see themselves represented there? When they see your faculty, will they see themselves represented there? Do we have enough women faculty members in your university so that our female students will see themselves represented there? I want to know how regular citizens in Cambridge who may not have access to money and other resources can learn about the resources that you offer. Is it easy to find out how to get a scholarship to attend one of your classes? How can I find out whether my teenager could go to the animation lab or to your maker spaces? Where could I as a parent go to find these things out if I were not someone who were very connected to folks? I also want to know how many Cambridge public students are admitted to each of your universities each year and how they're supported. I would like to know how many students can take classes for free and under what circumstances. I would like to know how many adults can take classes for free or at a low cost, and how many people in Cambridge you serve in this capacity as far as access to your classes or to educational opportunities at your institutions. I want to also talk now about construction and that impact on Cambridge residents. A lot of the construction is focused in certain areas, so thinking about East Cambridge, for example. I want to ask how you're making life better for Cambridge residents when you're doing the construction. I personally live in Cambridgeport, and what used to be about a 5-minute drive takes about 30 minutes now during traffic because of multiple construction projects taking place. And so when we think about that, that's actual time that is taken out of people's days. And for some of these projects, we're talking about 3-year projects. That's a real impact on someone as they're trying to go about their day, and it costs them time and money. And then when I think about the great opportunities, leaving the construction question, the great opportunities that you all are offering to folks, I want you to really think about systemically how the process is available to folks with the least among us. So if I'm the child of a faculty member who can connect me to a lab where I can get an internship, that's great. But how does a kid who's on free or reduced lunch or might have a different network take part in these opportunities, and how do they learn about them? So systemically, how are we making sure that those opportunities are focused on kids like that? That's it. Thanks.
Okay. Anyone else have comments, questions they want to share? No? Ted?
I'm sorry. No, I mean, I think Tom and Corinne
have hit all the big pictures questions.
All the big pictures. A couple of comments. A couple of comments. I was struck, as Tom was, about all the efforts everybody has made to reduce single occupancy vehicles and the use of cars, and it seems like the numbers are flat. You know, everything that's been going on doesn't seem to make any difference, and you know, I think that's unacceptable, but I don't know what we can do about that, and you know, what they can do about that. And you know, obviously our traffic department is very active and creating all these programs, but nothing seems to be changing people's attitude. You know, similarly, you know, we're doing a lot with creating bike lanes and bike facilities and parking, but it still seems that, well, it seems like there are a lot more bicycles on the streets. The numbers don't seem to really be justifying a major societal change, and be curious what can be done about all of that. You know, as always, I am concerned about cell towers and antennas and what the universities are doing about that, and the best way that they, you know, I know we all use our cell phones all the time and we're all using data all the time, but I think there has to be increased awareness and concerns about the aesthetics of it all, and not just putting them up on buildings willy-nilly. And, you know, with everybody's knowledge here, there must be some alternatives that could be developed. You know, but you know, Harvard seems to be mostly in a rehabilitation restoration mode in Cambridge. I don't think there's anything new being built right at the moment. Obviously, a lot is going on in Austin, and you know, the impacts of that when those buildings are complete, both in transporting students and faculty back and forth, and in what happens to the facilities that are moved out of Cambridge into Austin, what goes into those facilities. And I know everybody says they're planning and working on it, but you know, it'd be interesting to start to get some idea of what's going to happen to these areas. You know, Holt is very interesting. I'm thinking it might be great fun to be an undergraduate and get to spend 4 years in 4 different places. But, you know, if they are indeed as successful as they hope to be, as they want to be, what impact will that have on that very small area right by the river, and desires to expand out? And, you know, if Boston Sand and Gravel doesn't move, you know, and North Point is fully developed as residences and offices and labs, you know, they're going to be very constrained. You know, Corinne, in response to some of your questions, you know, I've lived in Cambridge for almost 40 years, and I personally had no connection to Harvard. My wife went to law school here, but until I retired, you know, yes, I'd walk through the campus, but I never knew what was going on. And now, you know, I make an effort to look at the kiosks and to look at all the postings and to see what's available. But you're right, it takes a lot of effort to do that. And if it were more open and available, all the universities, all the college. I mean, I walk through the Lunder galleries all the time. I mean, it's on my path back and forth, and so that's a great asset to the community, but I don't know that many people know who are walking on the street. You're welcome to come in and look at these art displays that change every couple of weeks or every couple of months. And, you know, it was not until I was on this board that I knew that Cambridge residents, I guess at that time, who had library cards, got free admission to the Fogg Museum. And now that it's free to all Cambridge residents, but, you know, that's not advertised all that much. And I think it's incumbent upon all the universities to make a greater effort to, you know, welcome in the public and let the public know what is available and what they can go to and what they can see, and, you know, looking at some of the new buildings. And the Smith Center is great. I think it really has changed Harvard Square for the, you know, much for the better. And but not that many people know that they can just go in and that there are all these, you know, restaurants and coffee shops and things that are open to the public. And so that's something I think that all the schools can do a better job at in making their facilities known to the public. That's my comments.
I guess I'll make a couple of short ones. I think you all make very good corporate as well as educational neighbors. I think you help the city out a great deal. I do think you have to do a better job on the outreach and making all your programs and so forth within grasp. A lot of people don't know what's going on. It's very hard if you're not in the mix all the time. I agree. I really like the help you've been giving the city on the resiliency. I think we need a lot more of that. And the question of help with the diversity, I guess this is a rotating diversity, so I guess that's always diverse. So I you know, the whole thing of this is a temporary thing. I guess because it's rotating, it stays diverse, and we get some of that benefit. Speaking personally on the Harvard side, age must be creeping up, because looking at all your upcoming projects, I worked on 7 of them already. But yes, I'd have to say some of the ecological issues and so forth, I think you need to do a better job of informing the public. This format here with the town gown, all the information that's generated, I think it helps with always the shadows and misinformation and so forth. Providing this information, I think, helps strengthen the connection between the universities and the public. So I guess that's all I'll say.
So the advantage of going at the end is you say, well, I agree with everything everybody said. I'm not going to say I agree, but I think that all the questions that have been brought up are important questions. And I'm looking back on a nearly 30-year perspective on this process. So I'm always just completely amazed by the schools portion of Harvard and MIT and Leslie's involvement in the community. I think Holt is going to probably feel a little bit behind in that. And but I see, you know, we've heard some things tonight. But there's a sort of a competitive aspect to this, which is sort of an interesting byproduct of the process. I mean, most other cities try to regulate the relationship with the institutions, through master plans, through permitting, other things. And it was decided here to do it differently, to get the data, and that so we're the forum in which the data is handed over, but we're not actually the people who use too much of that data. The school department and other people, you know, for everything that Harvard's doing, of course, the school department is also involved, and MIT, etc. Climate change and resiliency. Now, this was something that wasn't in the process until Harvard took off like a rocket about a dozen or 15 years ago with their internal process, which I was surprised because they're not the techies at the table, but in sustainability, they really are the techies. But it was, as I was understood, what made the Harvard program successful was they said, we're going to try to first look at what we can do institutionally. We're going to look at how our institution is governed. We're going to see how the people who govern and make decisions in our institution can be shown that sustainable action is consistent with the way the school makes decisions. And now it's sort of fun to see MIT playing catch up. Have they caught up? Have they gone beyond? I was very interested in the sustainable thing from Harvard saying, you know, we worked on our campus, but now we're realizing we've got to work on the whole world, and that we can do things with our small base on campus to actually affect the world. Now, MIT, with their goal to make human life better, period, that's kind of the mission of the institution, use technology to make human life better. So sustainability is a kind of a natural thing, because if we don't solve that one, we may have less human life. There was a fascinating program on WGBH about the day the dinosaurs died. And everybody knows a large chunk of something hit the Yucatan 65 million years ago, and after that there weren't any dinosaurs. What was fascinating about this program is that, well, they hit a gypsum formation, and the rock, and the asteroid went like 25 miles into the Earth. It was 7 miles in diameter. And it pulverized a tremendous amount of gypsum, which has a very high sulfur content compared to many other rocks. And that sulfur got into the atmosphere, and the atmosphere essentially caught on fire for the entire planet for 2 days. And, you know, most of life on Earth basically burned up in that period of those 2 days. So maybe this is science, maybe this is, you know, NOVA doing their thing, but I suspect there's a lot of science in there. It seemed like there was. Climate change doesn't act quite so quickly, but it seems clear that we have a complete failure in our nation's capital on addressing this problem. And in fact, it's the Harvard and MIT who are going to figure out some of the technology. It may be Holt who's going to figure out how to extend that, the management, and how Leslie is going to figure out how to teach it to the younger generation. So each institution can bring their own skills to bear on a problem that it doesn't look very encouraging that we're going to reach a satisfactory solution on that. So, of course, we've always looked at this as just a planning exercise. Tell us what you're going to build and when you're going to build it. And it's, so the very interesting piece was MIT got a few $100 million to advance one particular part of their mission in computing. And this is going to result in a building in sort of the middle of the property they own. And it will undoubtedly be a interesting building, and it'll probably be big enough that we'll come in and look at the urban design impacts of this building. The transportation side of it all has been referred to here before. And it seems like, you know, yes, there are all kinds of shuttle buses running around. That's presumably counter to the green efforts of and carbon and all that sort of stuff. If there were there weren't shuttle buses when I was a Harvard student, but the issues of security, issues of scheduling, of spreading things out. I mean, you know, when I was a student, it was okay for the girls to walk down from Radcliffe. You know, we didn't think about that the boys lived in the river houses and the girls lived in Radcliffe, and it was a bit of a trek for them. Now with the question of being more sensitive to gender issues, you know, we think about stuff we didn't think about 50 years ago. But the challenge of traffic in the city with a desire to keep growing, particularly on the technology front. There have been some steps to help the T figure out how to have greater throughput and get back to the train intervals that they had in 70 years ago. But there are other transportation problems, and I don't think our report really addresses too much of that. And what it does address says, well, we're reporting on things that don't seem to be going any particular direction, let alone the right direction. I tend to think a lot of our automobile problems are a result of the suburbanization of the region, which happened, you know. The original suburbanization happened in the late 19th century as railroads became big movers of people to jobs. And if you lived in Newton, you had a rail line that was mostly a people-moving rail line. So I think we should be thinking more and asking more questions about transportation, and maybe ask that some of the creativity that has shown up on some of the other issues maybe needs to bear more on that problem. I don't know, I feel like I'm just sort of wandering around here, but right. It's a very rich environment with enormous intellectual resources in various parts of the city. There's a tremendous commitment to work on the significant problems of the age. that puts some stress on the city in terms of our housing policy, our transportation policy. And yeah. But I think to not go forward is not the right answer. So anyway, I think I'll stop there.
Okay. Well, as you note, going last, a lot of the great questions have been raised by my colleagues. I think, so I'll just add a few thoughts. I think HALT is a really interesting experiment, and one that's going to be one of the bigger challenges to connect to the community here, especially the revolving student body sounds like a great opportunity for the students to be tourists in a lot of different countries and to not connect or have the experience of a resident in any of them, especially for the graduate students who are spending just 3 months in each of the countries. I think there could be some real conscious effort made to connect the undergraduates who might be here for as much as a year to the community, and that might start to really knit that campus into the community, which I think would be wonderful. It sounds like an exciting program. I think there is a lot of benefit to the wonderful diversity that the school has attracted, but I react like Tom. I don't want it to just be another hotel on the edge of town. As the school grows and becomes part of Cambridge and part of the academic community here in Cambridge, it needs to connect to the community as well. And I think that's a challenge given how the school is structured, but one that's worth figuring out, because there are a lot of really exciting and good things happening there that you're already tackling, and but figuring out what that looks like as you grow the undergraduate population, I think is kind of the next big step I'd like to see from HALT. I will weigh in on the SOV question. When parking inventories are static, it is hard to motivate people to get out of their cars. And, at Harvard and MIT are entitled to the number of parking spaces they have in their inventory. But there's a lot of good studies that show that all the positive incentives in the world only get you so far if parking continues to be available. And that's a really hard pill to swallow. It's a hard pill to sell to faculty, staff, and students. It's hard to do incrementally because you have to take whole facilities offline. It does free up wonderful real estate if you can do it, and save hundreds of thousands of dollars in building structured parking if you can do it. But I think what we're seeing is a plateauing of what progress can be made, given a static parking supply. I'm not offering any solutions there. I'm not saying go have your parking supplies immediately, anything like that. But I am saying that is, I think, what we're seeing here. MIT and Harvard already have quite low SOV rates, and we should acknowledge that compared to many of their peer institutions, they do very well. And that is what has allowed them to be that size and allowed so many things to flourish around them. But when we look at them compared to some of their high-tech neighbors that have flourished around them in Kendall Square, they're not at the same level for exactly the reason that we haven't let those buildings build the same amount of parking. So it is, as people are thinking about, maybe not right now, maybe not till 10 years from now, but how sacrosanct are those numbers is something I think is worth the institutions considering. Other than that, I think all the questions about both, how the institutions can interact with the schools, with the community, how would we can be better neighbors to each other, learn from each other. I would especially be interested in, given the the discussion around trees right now, what learning there is to offer from the tree survey that Leslie did, and how we heard a lot of counts of numbers of trees here. I like the count that gave caliper inches too. I mean, there's some real knowledge out there from all the institutions that I think doesn't necessarily need to be shared in public hearing format or anything else, but to the extent there are studies that you can provide links to or share on our website and get that information out there, we're here to facilitate that, and I'd like to see more of that happen. That's all I have. Does anyone else from the board have anything? Aram, is there anything else we need to do at this time? All right. Thank you all very much for coming. Thank you for all the good work you do in the community and for sharing it with us tonight. Thank you. Good night.